The show will begin momentarily.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
All right, everyone, welcome to Super Happy Dragon Lucky. This is episode 0xae. It's the 175th episode, and 0xae is apparently pronounced Ada-E. So, reminder, nothing on the show is financial advice. Please stay tuned also after the updates for a full AMA. So we'll get straight into the updates this week on Number Go Up. It is, as is so often in the recent episodes, corruption. And as we see, they peel back layers on FTX and actually ambush SBF Sam in various interviews on Twitter Spaces, we get to see more and more how obvious it is that the entire show was nothing but corruption. That entire company and all of the 140 or however many hundreds of companies there were under that umbrella, that it was all fraud. So either way, whatever. Not that you wouldn't have known that by looking at how they developed and came into being, but and who they were and what I guess prior experience or philosophy that was that people knew about. So anyway, when everything's number go up, you can pretty well guess what's going to come next. Next, Dragonchain updates. So last week's Super Happy Dragon Lucky Dragonchain lot distribution, that the episode itself created 534 lot. There were 3 questions that were awarded. I did answer more than 3 questions, but only the first 3 are awarded on a normal week. Each of those questioners or topic contributors received 89 lot. There was no featured post last week. The host received 89 lot, and Dragonchain received 178 lot. Next Dragonchain update for those of you who have had recent difficulty launching nodes or maintaining nodes. We think, we don't know, but we think that some of the issues that we've seen were related to the migration of infrastructure, and the team did some successful testing yesterday, and we are recommending using Ubuntu 20.04, and watch for more details in the Dragonchain layer, where we can answer more questions or further whittle down if there are any other issues that remain. So do watch the Dragonchain layer for that, and remember 20.04. And because I only saw part of the conversation, so I don't know all of the details of what the issues were, but hopefully, I did ask that, and I think they were planning on documenting all of it, putting it into an open post. So next, .social updates. The LCP, the layer creation process for December 2022. The proposal phase starts today, and per a DenDAO vote, the winners, when the selection phase starts or ends, will be the number 1 layer proposal as ranked by unique voters, the number 8 layer proposal as ranked by lower committed, and the number 21 layer proposal as ranked by lower committed. So it'll be super interesting that the number 8 and number 21 proposals will be created. That is a new change for December 2022 that it'll be interesting how that plays out. This proposal creation phase will run for 1 week. Make sure that your layer proposal isn't a duplicate, or at least there isn't a reason for it being a duplicate. And all proposals should be entered by next Monday, December 12. Commitment phase will then start the Tuesday, December 13th at 1500 UTC, which is 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, and go to the layer and put in your proposals. Okay, the LCP layer. Next, on Coffee with Den, make sure there will be an episode this week. Tomorrow, tune in Wednesday for Coffee with Den at 900 Eastern and 600 Pacific. Everyone who participates in the show will earn Coffee with Den lot to help manage and decide what to do with the show and with the format and with anything else that might be wished there. And DenDAO update, the DenDAO call is this Thursday, December 8th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. UTC. Watch for the post in the DenDAO layer for the agenda and a link to join live. Everyone is welcome to join. You don't need to have your camera on unless you want it on. And it is a meeting. It's not a show. So it results in really good discussions, really good ideas. And a lot of times it's well in advance of any actual action. But it's intended really to try to get feedback, try to brainstorm ideas, and then try to at least prepare for decisions that are made. So, join that if you can, at least watch it, at least share it. And let's see here. The next thing is the World Blockchain Roundtable update. So make sure you watch and share last week's episode on IoT. The more views it gets in its first week, the more lot all the participants will get. It was a pretty interesting show. There was a lot of interesting stuff about sensors and how you can use IoT in or with blockchain, how you can improve what IoT can do. And episode 81 will be on Thursday, December 8th at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central. The topic is blockchain architecture. So please leave a question or subject to discuss about blockchain architecture. It's a huge subject that I'm super interested in. So it should hopefully be a good episode, and it'll be interesting to see what the other hosts think about blockchain architecture. That's all of the updates. So we'll have a full AMA right after this.
Now, more than ever, our data is at risk. Our supply chains are in jeopardy. Our systems are broken, and businesses feel powerless. Dragonchain gives you a different way, a safer way, a better way, and you have power over your data. Dragonchain gives you proof in an untrusted world. Build now at DRGN, America's blockchain.
Okay, so we refresh the page and we go to the questions. So first up is Jacob Wayne. What happens to images when they are recorded on the blockchain? To explain what I mean, typically the images are actually URLs pointing to an image elsewhere. But I was thinking, if a website that is hosting an image is abandoned, would you be able to see what the image was on the blockchain, or is it gone forever, leaving the URL text behind? So this, the answer to this is that it totally depends. If you're talking about Ethereum NFTs as an example, versus an image on Dragon or on Den, thank you, or gosh, I guess there are a couple of other examples that I could give, but that typically images on used for an Ethereum NFT are typically, although it's not a great situation, stored elsewhere. But you say centralized in some way, stored on AWS in an S3 bucket or something similar. Occasionally, some projects, and there are plenty of them that do this well. They store the images in a decentralized blockchain, like or a system like IPFS, or like Filecoin, or one of the Filecoin competitors. And there are a lot of them. And I think even Distant in the reply, and I didn't get to read his whole reply, but he even mentions a couple of them, like LokiNet, I think, is one that he's been interested in using. Now, that said, Dragonchain thinks of this in a much more, how do I want to say this? A much more agnostic way. So philosophically, you either want the file, the data which is the image, ideally stored on chain, so that the entire the data needed to reconstruct the exact image and to prove that the image which is reconstructed is unmodified from that point in the chain, that is the ideal. And I will give you a little example of how we came to that philosophy. That this will be a little bit of a long answer. That at Disney, I was talking with one of the devs, and it came up that one of the projects that was interested in using the Disney private blockchain platform, which became Dragonchain, was going to be doing either heavy image or even potentially video storage. That they wanted to essentially memorialize or manage these images, these videos, this binary data generically on chain. And so he mentioned to me, okay, we need to sometime soon figure out at least a starting point for what we would say are transaction size or block size limits. That is, how much data can be stored in a transaction or a block. And I said, okay, that makes total sense. That's a great engineering proposal, that we would set at least a starting point for the boundaries for data storage on chain, right? And it was interesting because I then said, okay, I'll think about it. You think about it. We'll come back when we have good thoughts in a day or two, and make a decision. And I started walking down the hall, and I got about 5 cubes away down the hall, and I like, wait a minute. I think so I turned around and said, hey, I think I have it already, that we are a hybrid blockchain. So very different from Bitcoin, from Ethereum, architecturally. That because we are hybrid, and I'll say the reason we are hybrid is to solve the scalability issue, to solve the throughput, how many transactions we can actually process in a given period of time, and a lot of the other issues that blockchain has. That was the architectural answer that I proposed when I came into Disney, was to make it a hybrid blockchain architecture, where we are essentially blockchain of blockchains, and we are we're leveraging Bitcoin and Ethereum and anyone else to provide utility, but also to provide security. in very interesting ways and very flexible ways. Okay, so that's the reason we're hybrid. But because we are hybrid, it means that every business use has its own chain. So let's say I have this group that was going to be at the time, they were planning to essentially use the blockchain to store these images and video files and other binary data. That they have their own chain, and that portion of the chain is fully controlled by them. It is not decentralized. The payload itself, the data, is not decentralized, meaning that unlike other chains where, let's say on Bitcoin, the big argument is if you let the Bitcoin transaction and block size expand, it will affect everyone on the network equally. So you can essentially spam the network and make it very expensive to run a node. You can make it potentially so that some people who were running nodes couldn't afford to, or they wouldn't have the capacity to store that much extra data. We, however, didn't have that issue because, as I often say, we separate the proof from the payload. So the payload is the part that you care about as a business that might contain your customer data, might contain regulated data like financial data or health information. That stays fully under your control. So you can follow whatever rules are currently exist, or in some cases, if you want, you can decentralize it however you want. You can store it in a decentralized file system like IPFS, Siacoin, LokiNet, any of these other networks, or build your own federated distributed network to hold that data. You could use torrents. You could use anything you want, but the proof is decentralized and the proof is standardized so that it doesn't matter if you have a 4K gigantic video file of a movie as your transaction payload directly on chain, that your level 2 verifications, level 3, level 4, and level 5 verifications are all going to be the same size. So that is not the same size as the video, that they will be the same size as any other transaction, which, you could have a tweet stored and it'll be the same size of an L2 and L3 verification and L4 verification, for example, as would this massive 4K video file. Okay. So the payload, the business data is stored on that business's chain. And so they know what are the storage requirements. They know, hey, we're storing video files, so we need to make sure that we have enough storage for video files. They also, if they distribute it to any partner systems, inside the company, outside the company, they will also know what the requirements are for storage. So it's totally up to them, and we don't need, to get back to that story, we don't need to put any limits on what you can store, because it's your own system, it's your own data. Dragonchain, the platform, doesn't care. So that's the beauty of it. And therefore, with Dragonchain, you can literally store the direct binary, although it'll typically be encoded and compressed. You wouldn't have to, but you can do whatever you want. You would encode the binary data, compress it, and store it directly on chain so it can be proven later. Exactly. We have seen customers that have taken the data and stored it in a regular centralized file system and then put the hash on chain. Okay. And typically that it depends on how the images or other data are hosted, that might be why they do that. I do believe that I have seen at least one system that was built on Dragonchain that did both. So it did store it directly on chain, and it did store it for easier hosting in a more traditional centralized file system. And there are interesting things like I believe on Eternal that the data is stored directly. I'd have to look because I can't remember if videos are that way too or not. But the main point there is that if you see a tweet, that you can, for one thing, you can download the proof. So even if Eternal's website went away, you can download the proof of any tweet or Eternal transaction at eternal.report right now. That has made it, I think the download button, I don't remember if it works before it gets to level 5 or not, but I know that there's a download button where you can download the entire proof report, which includes the original transaction, the original data, and all of the proof data from all of the chains involved, the 8, 7, 8, 10, depending on when it was put in place, chains that have verified it. So that's a really long answer, but it's a really good question. So thanks a bunch. Next, and so yeah, read through. I'll read through Dave's reply and Hyperion Frequency's reply. So thanks for all that. Next, we have let's see here, Oxons. Okay, Beaxy has recently announced that they are stopping fiat pairs as they have lost their supplier. I don't mean what you mean by supplier fiat, or if you mean like a banking partner is maybe what I would assume you mean. So any thoughts on this is your question? No, I mean that this type of thing happens a lot, especially these days, because I imagine a lot of banks, if they weren't already, are probably marking crypto, and crypto exchanges and crypto projects as higher risk, right? So the guys at Beaxy have, and I don't mean the old guys. If you look up some stuff on Beaxy, I think there was a team prior that this team bought it from. This team has been very, they were always very straightforward and honest with us. And I've never seen them do anything that I would question. So I don't have any thoughts on it. It's just one of the things that happens, but I don't know. And I shouldn't comment on anything about their business. I can, like I said, I can comment generically that with all of the FTX stuff, those in the industry that are not bad actors are still going to suffer in various ways. And that's the reality of it. And it sucks. And it's the one more reason for me to tell you all, for your own good, not investment advice, but for your own good, that technology gives you all the tools necessary to avoid getting screwed by people like SBF. And yet, millions of people still get screwed by people like SBF. And it hurts everyone. So, and it sucks. And if he hasn't been arrested yet, it's a crazy thing. But maybe it isn't. Okay, next we go Agent B on 12/31/21. Okay. So the very end of the year last year, he said there's so much happening. You can't wait to share it with us. Over 11 months have passed and nothing was shared. Can you please explain what happened? What's happened this year? So we had Luna. We had in this industry, in the crypto industry, in the blockchain industry, we had Luna, we had Celsius, we had most recent FTX, and there have been a lot more than that of issues. And I don't want to, because you can point blame entirely at me, but I cannot control the projects that we have coming to us as customers, other than, we're actively always out there selling real capabilities. And frankly, a lot of it is too early. Like say, if you look back at the history, I don't know the dates, but it seems to me it probably would have been mid 2021. So probably 18 months ago, might have been as far back as 24 months ago. I don't know. But you look at what we were trying to sell. In fact, when we first started, for the question above, with Beaxy, why did we first talk to Beaxy? What was our entire angle on that? It was to see an exchange implement the actual use of this technology, and the further down we can go, and if it was a bigger exchange, maybe they could have, it could have been a bigger project and maybe a little more fundamental to the exchange, right? More on that later. But and note that you can ask me that in a few months, maybe something will have something outside of my control. We are working with a project that is doing that. But either way, that we went to Beaxy to sell the ability to prove that these exchanges were not necessarily compliant, but they were doing what they should be doing. That number one, the big thing was proof of volume, which is important, especially in a crypto exchange. The second was the potential that they could prove that they were not front-running customers. I believe that's a term, and it's been a while. I think that's the right term. That essentially, even with a traditional stock exchange, that if I go into a broker, and I'm not going to mention any of them, but any of the big consumer-focused brokers, that if you make a trade and say, hey, I'm going to buy these or I'm going to sell these at whatever price, and I put in my order and the trade happens, that and I'm no expert in this, but my understanding is that more often than not, your order is a second or even third class citizen in that order book. That when that order is executed, the exchange and its partners or investors or the powers that be have the ability and right to essentially rearrange the orders. So they say, hey, I can see that 100 of these what do I want to call them? Let's see here, plebeians. Let's call them plebs. 100 of these plebs are placing an order to sell at the same time. I'm going to get in front of it and get the better deal, or get dump it in front of them, so they don't essentially get as good of a deal as they would, even though they made the decision, they signaled the order with a real committed sale or purchase, and that those people, let's call them the patricians, that those people are able to use that literally as a signal to front run those orders and profit, right? So what we can do in the crypto world, even in a centralized exchange where it's at least more efficient to use a centralized exchange than a decentralized one, although you have to be more careful, that in my opinion, any centralized exchange in the crypto industry should be using the technology fundamentally, if not directly in their systems, which would be ideal, at least in their reporting, that they should be doing proof of reserves. They should be doing proofs of these trades, the timing of the trades, the volume, and the identity. And you can do that without exposing identities, and all of these things are solved. And we, if you look on the website, you can see that there's an entire suite of products and services available under the, I believe they're under the anti-fraud products and services, but directly applicable to exchanges. And, they're applicable to other, to banking as well. They're applicable to anything where you might have a reason that would invite fraud in your business, okay, internally or externally. That we have tools to signal the fraud, to prevent the fraud, and to essentially prove to your customers that their interactions were not cheated, right? So various things like that. And yet, so we've been trying to sell that for many years. We had one person, in fact, that was going to intro us to one of the major exchanges, but wanted to see an operational use of this tech. And that was one of the big reasons we drove to implement the Beaxy stuff. So it's an interesting thing. And I guess my point in this is that oftentimes, especially in this industry, we find ourselves well ahead of the ideal timing. And just in the past couple of weeks after SBF, now there is a drive for this very tech. Now, I will say it is very, I don't want to say dumbed down, but it is very tightly scoped. They are only talking about proof of reserves, which is very, obviously important. And you have to be very careful because, like, say, even Voorhees had mentioned, I think it was Voorhees had mentioned that proof of reserves isn't enough. You also need proof of debt, the other side of the balance sheet. That, you can say, oh, I have $10 billion here, but it doesn't matter a lick if you owe 21 billion, right? So anyway, it's interesting stuff that all of those centralized exchanges have not been using the tech. I would say largely not been using the tech, but I would say largely none of them have been using the tech. I think the only thing close to anyone using the tech has been Beaxy. Now, you could say Binance, they have their own chain, so they have been using the tech in various ways, but the actual trading, less so. So, and some of the the ability to prove what would normally be compliance, but at least in this case is to prove that they're not being fraudulent, isn't being used where it should. And, we reached out to them. We reached out to, I think, every major exchange. In some cases, there are probably some exchanges that would have, if there were any driver to do it, or because there are a couple of exchanges that I think are pretty legit, that do actually do what they say. Kraken being one. I think they're, they have the best logo, and they are largely, I think, philosophically and fundamentally aligned with what crypto is supposed to be about, even though they are a centralized exchange. But we don't always have foot in door everywhere. I don't have the biggest network ever. I don't have, we don't have any VCs. We never have had any VCs involved, and that would have probably helped us, but it wasn't, philosophically what we were going for when we created the project. It's software. So beyond that, I can't control. We've had at least a couple of projects that had funding dry up, and largely, you look not only as crypto in trouble because of stupidity and criminal action, fraud. I would say it isn't just stupidity that caused the FTX collapse. I think people not paying attention made it possible, but the culprit is still SBF and the gang running that venture. But beyond that, the economy itself has fallen apart. We're likely to see a massive housing collapse, probably a crash, but there are a lot of weird economic things with the dollar where it's supposed to be coming back. So stocks will probably rise before they collapse, is what I don't know if I understand that well, but one way or another, it's hard to sell right now, and it's hard to raise money right now. And it's hard, pretty much any because I know from a lot of the startups, that they've either tried, there are a couple of them that some of their funding has a gap now. They are hoping to come back at the beginning of the year with more funding. We have a couple of others that did not get the funding that was committed. That was what do you call it? That people basically committed to funding a project and it never came. So there are a couple there, and there are a couple that have been that, like say our internal projects. I'm still extremely excited about one of the projects that has a white paper almost completed, has a full architecture and design almost completed, has the initial proof of concept code in place, and ongoing coding, as well as has very interesting partners that and you would all, if you knew who they were, would all be very excited about them, which is why I'm not telling you who they are, because I don't want to deal with you asking. It was like win. It's not worth it. So we've had delays. I think a lot of the reason that the SEC lawsuit came in was to delay us and to cause us. It's blatant. It's not like I have to theorize that. That's why they did it. They wanted to cost us as much money as they could, and cost me as much focus as they could. And they were quite successful, and they still caused some delays. So that one project that we were wanting to get out in October is still in development. So hopefully it'll be out soon. And there are others. There's another one that I'm not going to give you a date, but at least everything appears to be in order. It's not our project. It's an outside project, so I can't control it. But we are working heavily with them, and they are a really good team. So anyway, apologies that not everything turns out like we would all hope, and you have to be patient, So next, whether things are blocked or not blocked. I mean, they're blocked on my side, but that there are some that are marked abusive. I'm not going to answer. Just so you guys note, there's some of those in there that are legitimate, reasonable questions that I would love to answer. And you just need to control your emotions and not bring my family into it. Because frankly, I'm never going to answer any question if you're going to talk shit on my family or threaten my family or mention my family, because you don't have the right to do that. And you go fuck yourself if you think otherwise. So that's why you're not going to get those questions answered. And you can just go fuck off. I don't care if you leave forever. I don't need any of that bullshit or any of that, emotional tied stuff. This is a real project. If you aren't here for those reasons, then just go fuck off somewhere else. There are plenty of projects where, you can do that stuff and it's probably, wanted. I don't know, whatever. Okay. No featured content this week, okay, but new merch. There is a We Believed Sam. There's a Morte ad numerum ascender, death to number go up. I think I didn't complete my order. I think I put them in there and I was wanting to get something else, but they got distracted. So I would be wearing them right now. So go buy that. All of them. Without a coupon code, there's no coupon code needed, or $1 over cost. And as long as we sell them, they'll just be $1 over cost to make sure that if there are any rounding errors, it'll be covered on our side. So go buy some of those. And in closing, watch Super Happy Dragon Lucky next Tuesday. Make sure you share this episode as you can. And come back on Thursday to watch the World Blockchain Roundtable. Should be a good fundamentals-based episode this week, I think. Hopefully nothing will happen in politics or with FTX that will take too much time at the beginning of it, and we can just get straight questions. because there's a lot of technical detail that we can get into. Make sure you follow Dragonchain, Real Denizens, and Jojoro on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Den, of course. Make sure you like, comment, and share, because anybody who got a question answered will get more lot if this gets more views. I think that's it. Thank you.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. Adaptable approach is palpable if this animal is fallible. But that conclusion is laughable, so with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.